Hello everyone, thanks for stopping by and checking out my channel. So for today's video, I'm going to be showing you all how to build 4 more famous spaceships from Star Wars in Starfield. Now the last video I did was a huge success. A lot of you guys really loved that video, so this is a part 2. So if you guys are new here and you haven't seen my previous video, I recommend you check that out as well. In my last video, I showed you guys how to build an X-Wing, the Falcon, the Razor Crest, the Pelican from Halo, and a Y-Wing. Now for today's video, I'm only going to be showing you how to build 4 ships instead of 5, and that's because these ships took a lot longer to make. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you all how to build a Consular class ship from Star Wars, which you see at the very beginning of episode 1 that ends up getting destroyed. I'm going to be showing you guys how to build a Corellian Corvette, a TIE fighter / vulture droid, and of course a Star Destroyer. Now this video is going to be a long one and it's going to be time stamped, that way you guys can find whatever ship you want, and then you can always just come back to this video if you ever decide to build any of these ships. And I saw some of the requests in my last video. A lot of you guys would like to have some commentary along the shipbuilding, so I'm going to do my best to give some explanation as to the thought process behind building some of these ships. So at any point you guys enjoy this video, it would be greatly appreciated if you give it a thumbs up because it helps me out in the algorithm. And with that said, let's go ahead and jump right into it. So first up, I want to showcase how to build a TIE Interceptor / vulture droid / Kylo Ren's Interceptor. I tried to make a TIE fighter and it just didn't work out right with the limited parts I had, so it kind of morphed into a TIE Interceptor / vulture droid looking thing. Now this is my least favorite of the 4, but I do like how it looks in space and the way that it feels in combat and stuff. It is very smooth and it's pretty fast, and it's just really fun to fly. Now in the background gameplay, I'm taking my cursor and I'm highlighting over top of each of the parts. That way you guys can see over on the left-hand side what parts I'm using. Now what confuses a lot of people from what I've noticed is that people try to match the parts exactly. You don't have to do that. For example, if I use like a Deimos hull or something from Deimos, you could use something from Stroud Eklund. It doesn't have to be exactly the same thing as what I use. These videos are just supposed to be like a general guide, like, hey, put the parts in this specific order. They can be any parts you want. Same thing goes for like the reactors and stuff. I like to use C-class reactors and B-class reactors depending on the ship, because shipbuilding is a late game activity and I like to have like the biggest and best parts. So if you want to replicate this using a smaller reactor or a smaller grav drive, go for it. But for the most part, I like to showcase like the C-class reactors and stuff because, you know, I want my ships to be the best of the best. But these ships can probably be done with lesser reactors. But one of the benefits of having the bigger reactors is that they have more pieces that you can kind of attach to them and stuff. And then same kind of goes for the decoration pieces. There's a lot of decoration pieces on these ships, and you guys can just mix and match and use whatever decorations you want. It doesn't have to be exactly the same as mine. And then most of these ships are symmetrical, so you can just look at the parts, and then what you do to one wing, you can just duplicate and do to the other wings. So you can just highlight all the pieces and then hit the copy button and then just take it to the opposite side and flip it, and then that's going to save you a ton of time. And then another major question that I keep seeing is, how do I find specific parts? And there's no easy way to answer that question because this game has parts scattered all over the place. Like if you want parts from like Stroud Eklund, you have to go to the Stroud Eklund store. And if you want parts from Deimos, you go to the Deimos store. There's a bunch of Reddit threads that kind of give locations of different part pieces and what the insides of the pieces look like and stuff. So if you're struggling to find specific parts, just head over to Reddit. There's just tons of people in the community that are trying to work with each other with the shipbuilding. I personally like to go to a store and then I buy a ship that has most of the parts that looks like I'm going to need. So for example, if I want to build an X-Wing, I go and buy a ship that, you know, kind of looks like a good starting point for an X-Wing. And then once I buy the ship, I take it back to my main outpost, and then I use the shipbuilder that's at my outpost, because the shipbuilder at your outpost tends to have a bit more pieces and parts to choose from. So that is the process that I go through for every single one of the ships that I build. So I just buy a ship that looks like it has most of the parts I need, and then I bring it back to my outpost, and that is where I build it. So this is pretty much my TIE Interceptor build. It was a huge hassle to make this. It took me a couple hours to just trial and error the pieces around. So this is what the final product looks like. I'm going to give you guys a quick tour of the ship, and then I'll show some gameplay of this thing taking off and flying around in outer space.
En can I be of service, Captain?
Things for you.
Your clothes clean, your boots polished, your mirror shine.
All thrusters firing.
Some religions say our lives are circular. Well,
Stay in orbit or jump. Your call.
All right, so next up, I want to show you guys how to build the Star Destroyer, and oh boy, is this going to be something. If it's a little bit hard to follow, I apologize. This thing is just so massive. It took me 7 hours to build this thing. This was just crazy, and just even showcasing this to you guys in the builder, I was losing frames just drastically. Like, the game really struggles to handle this thing in the builder mode. But basically, think of this as a pyramid. You want to build upwards, and you want to get smaller with each layer. And there's multiple layers. And when it comes to the 1x1s and the 2x1s and the 3x1s, I didn't make them anything special. I didn't try to design the interior of this thing because it's so massive. I just wanted to get you guys like a base model, and then I'll go back and decorate the interior later. So I highly recommend you guys put the interiors where you want them as you build. For example, I would make the bottom nothing but like engineer levels and stuff, and then I would like work my way up, and then I would add some like living quarters on the second or third level and stuff like that. There are a lot of decoration pieces on this, so pay attention to my cursor when I hover over top of the decoration pieces. But as long as you start from the bottom and you build your way up and you do it in the chunks that I'm showing here, it should be fairly easy to follow. Although I do recommend that you save the engines for last because you kind of have to do a bit of a glitch to get them to work, and I'll show you guys how to do that. But this is obviously a C-class ship. I went with the absolute best parts that you could get because it's a Star Destroyer. It has to have all the best C-class parts. I mean, it wouldn't make sense if it didn't. But yeah, each level is just less and less than the previous level, and you just work your way up like it's a pyramid. There's a lot of small decoration pieces. You can put them in the same spots as I did, or you can spice it up however you want. The hardest part of building the Star Destroyer was the bridge. I just couldn't get the bridge to look the right way. This thing definitely gets harder to build the closer to the top that you get, but I tried my best to work with the materials that I had. I really hate that this game forces you to have one shield generator, because if I could have had 2 shield generators, it would have looked a lot closer to what an actual Star Destroyer looks like. Because, you know, at the top of a Star Destroyer, it's got that like circular ball part at the top. So I was only able to get one of those. I wish that you could have 2. Hopefully there's like a mod or something that comes out in the future that allows you to have 2. But I definitely like the way that this turned out. It was a huge pain in the butt, but it was a challenge, and it was fun to sit here and try to design this. Now, I have seen a couple other people's Star Destroyers out there in the community, but none of them really did it for me, which is another thing I saw in my previous video, is like people were claiming that I was like stealing stuff from other channels, which is not the case. Like, I sit there and I build these from the ground up, and it takes hours upon hours to do so. My guess is that a lot of channels that are all making these shipbuilding guides, you know, we're all looking at the same pictures. Like, when I build a Star Destroyer, I look at a picture of a Star Destroyer, and we're all limited to the same parts. So if we're all looking at the same pictures and we're all trying to build a ship based off of the same materials that we have in this game, you know, obviously the ships are going to look pretty similar to one another. But yeah, this thing took me 7 hours, and I am super happy with it. But like I said, I would pay close attention to the interior parts as you build them, because I tried to take a walk through this thing and I got lost for 10 minutes. It is crazy big on the inside, and when everything looks exactly the same, you have no idea where you're at. So it's very easy to get confused, and it's easy to get lost, and you walk through one hallway and it looks the same as the previous hallway, and it's basically just a big maze on the inside. So definitely take your time when you're building the interior. And then lastly, I just want to mention the engines. The engines are a bit tricky because they don't want to go exactly where you place them. So you have to do a little bit of a glitch to get them to go where you want. So I'm going to let the video play out, and when it gets to the part where I start to build the engines, then I'll tell you guys how to do the glitch. And to get this glitch to work, what I recommend is that you delete some of the spaces below where you want the engines to be. And then what you have to do is actually duplicate one of the small little companionways, move the landing gears out of the way, and then put one of the small companionways at the bottom. Then you hit Y to duplicate it, and it's going to stack it on top of itself. Then once it's stacked on top of itself, delete the one underneath, and then you just put the landing gear back where it was. So this kind of tricks the game into thinking that the piece is supposed to belong there, even though it technically doesn't fit. And this building technique comes in handy all the time when you're trying to do your shipbuilding. Whenever you try to duplicate an object, sometimes it will stack on top of itself and will force the object to go there even though it's not supposed to. And then next, I'll give you a small tour and then I'll show you what it looks like in space.
Lifting off now.
It's very rude of the universe to not welcome you with violence arrive in space. And a bare minimum, a shooting star.
We have to talk. It's important.
There's no way you can win this!
Alright, so next up is the ship that we see at the very beginning of Star Wars Episode 1, A Phantom Menace. It's the ship that Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan arrive in at the very beginning of the movie, and it gets blown up within like the first couple minutes. But I really love the design of this ship. I think it looks super cool, so I wanted to recreate it in Starfield. Now this one is pretty straightforward, so I'm just going to let it play out, and then at the very end, there's a bit of a glitch that we have to do, so I'll explain that. But we're going to be building this ship from the back to the front, that way we can save the glitch for last. Okay, so now that we're at the front of the ship, we want to do the glitch to get this big, like, box-looking part to work right. So what we want to do is duplicate this piece and then duplicate again so that it stacks on top of itself. Then you want to delete the piece that's on the bottom and put the cockpit right underneath of it. Then you want to take this square piece that I have off to the side and you want to put it on the very top. Then you want to go back down to the middle piece and hit the Y button to duplicate it. And this is going to force the piece to go down inside of the cockpit and sort of glitch through it. This is going to make it look a lot more complete. Fair warning that this is going to have some clipping issues, so when you're inside of the cockpit, you are going to see a little bit of the inside of the box, and it's going to look a little glitchy. So I recommend only flying this ship in third person, or you could always just skip this step if the clipping bugs you, and you could just not have that piece that's underneath.
I'm doing a whole history of Constellation's most decorated. It's just you defeating your name into a data slate for 5 hours.
This bird into space. Aim point reached. Orbit stable.
And then lastly is another one of my favorites. I just love the way that this one turned out, and it's the Corellian Corvette. Now, I'm not going to do any commentary over this one. There's no glitches or anything crazy over the top that you have to worry about. Just watch my cursor if you want to know the parts that I used, and then hopefully the way that I broke it into chunks makes it a little bit easier for you guys to understand. So with that, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. It was a ton of fun to make. If you guys want to see any other ships in future videos, then let me know down in the comment section down below. And if this video is popular, then I'll be sure to make a part 3. But that is going to do it for me, guys, and I will talk to you all in the next video.
I'm ready to receive them. Marching orders, food orders, all orders. Just let me